Daniel Cross ran through Street Aurelius Medical Center with a speed that frightened the people who moved aside for him, not because he looked like a man chasing a child, but because he looked like a man who had stopped being human enough to hesitate. Evelyn Vale followed 3 steps behind, her cream suit flashing through the corridor like a mistake that refused to disappear. Dr. Malcolm Grant behind her with a trauma radio in one hand, Russell from security ahead of them shouting into his shoulder mic, and Nurse Lena Ortiz cutting through side traffic with the brutal efficiency of someone who had no patience left for anyone who treated hospital hallways like office space. Daniel did not shout Emma's name. That was the first thing that told Evelyn he was terrified. A panicked father shouted. A trained negotiator counted exits, cameras, stairwells, blind corners, elevators, badge readers, and the time since the last confirmed contact. 32 minutes since Marion's last message. Unknown time since Emma had been moved from the pediatric lounge. 1 masked pediatric internal hold, administrative review tag. 7 years old, his emergency note format, his handwriting habits turned into a trap. Pediatric family lounge is ahead, Russell called. Daniel did not slow. The lounge doors were open. 2 open. A children's mural covered the wall, bright animals painted in cheerful colors under fluorescent lights. A blue fish with angry eyebrows stared from a tank near the corner. 2 chairs had been pushed aside. A stack of picture books lay scattered on the floor. Emma's purple backpack sat under the low table. Her stuffed fox was gone. Daniel's breath stopped and then returned as something colder. Marion Bell stood near the nurse's station, one hand pressed to her chest, her silver hair loose from its clip, her face white with guilt. "Daniel," she said. "I only turned for a moment." A woman in a transport jacket said pediatric observation needed her for a precautionary check because of possible exposure. She had a badge. She knew Emma's name. She knew your emergency note. Description. Daniel's voice was flat enough that Marion flinched. Mid-30s, brown hair tucked under a cap, surgical mask, transport jacket. She said Dr. Grant requested it. Grant snapped, "I did not." Daniel turned to Russell. "Cameras." Russell was already moving, pulling corridor footage now. Evelyn looked at the empty chair where Emma had been sitting. How did they access her file? Daniel stared at the purple backpack. They didn't need the whole file. They needed one detail convincing enough for a safe adult to obey. Marion's eyes filled. "I should have asked for confirmation." Daniel looked at her, and for 1 second the father and the negotiator fought inside him so violently that everyone around him seemed to stop breathing. Marion had protected Emma all morning. She had made one human mistake in a hospital where a dozen systems had already failed. If Daniel punished her with his fear, Voss would win another inch. "Marion," he said, forcing each word into gentleness, "you did what a hospital trained you to do. Someone used procedure as a costume. That is not your shame." Marion covered her mouth. Evelyn lowered her eyes. Daniel crouched beside the table and touched Emma's backpack without moving it. "No one touches this." Photograph, then bag. "Her inhaler?" Marion pointed with a shaking hand. "Front pocket." She had the backup with her. Daniel nodded. "Backup inhaler with Emma. Good. Stuffed fox with Emma. Comfort object present. Likely cooperative, not dragged. No signs of struggle. That could mean she trusted the person. It could mean she was told he needed her. It could mean the wrong person knew exactly which fear to use." Daniel stood. "They don't want to hurt her in the hallway," he said. Evelyn looked at him. "How can you know that?" "Because they used a chart note, not force. They need her movable, quiet, and useful." "Useful for what?" Grant asked. Daniel's face did not change. "Leverage." Russell returned with a tablet. "Footage. East Corridor camera." Daniel took 1 step toward the tablet and stopped himself. "Put it on the wall monitor." Evelyn understood immediately. If Daniel held the tablet, he might see something as a father before he could process it as evidence. Russell connected the feed. The lounge appeared on screen from an overhead angle. Emma sat at the low table drawing, Marion speaking with a pediatric nurse by the desk. A woman in a transport jacket entered, mask on, cap low. She crouched beside Emma. Emma looked up. The woman showed her something on a tablet. Emma's face changed from cautious to alarmed. Daniel's hands curled. The woman extended a hand. Emma grabbed her stuffed fox, picked up her small emergency pouch, and followed. Marion turned too late. The woman placed one hand lightly at Emma's back, not pushing, guiding. They exited toward the East Service corridor. "Pause," Daniel said. Russell froze the image. Daniel stepped closer to the screen. "Zoom on the tablet." "Resolution's limited," Russell said. The image enlarged. The tablet was angled, but part of the screen caught light. Daniel saw a blurred photo. Himself in the command room, head bent over the glass wall. Beneath it, a line of text too small to read. But Emma's reaction told him enough. The woman had shown Emma that Daniel was in danger, or needed her, or had asked for her. Voss had not taken Emma by force. He had taken her by trust. Daniel's throat tightened, but his voice remained calm. Track direction. Russell advanced footage. The woman moved through East Service corridor, then turned near a staff elevator. Badge scan. Elevator opened. "Badge ID?" Evelyn asked. Russell checked. "Temporary transport badge assigned this morning to Owen Vale." Evelyn's face went hard. "He gave them access." Grant swore. "Where does the elevator go?" "Stopped at sub-basement, then again at imaging level, then service data drops for 4 minutes." Daniel looked at Russell. "Service data does not drop by accident today." "No. Where are the camera blind zones between imaging and sub-basement?" Russell hesitated. "Old maintenance spine behind radiology, decommissioned corridor, loading tunnel, oxygen storage access, roof mechanical stairs. Which one can hold a child quietly?" Marion whispered. "Daniel." He did not answer her. Russell said, "Radiology has unused family consult rooms near old MRI too, but if they wanted leverage, they might keep her near the network room or supply corridor." Daniel looked at Evelyn. Where would Owen go if he wanted a hidden room that still gives access to hospital systems? Evelyn's mind moved quickly now, sharpened by guilt. "The old simulation suite. Before the East Tower opened, my father used it for donor demonstrations and board training. It sits between radiology storage and the data annex. Most staff don't know it still exists." Ehrenfeld arrived breathless at the doorway, having chased them from the command room. "I know that room. Silverlight vendors used it during implementation week." Daniel looked at him. "Can it be locked remotely?" Aaron swallowed. "Yes." "Can it connect to the internal network?" "Yes." "Can it access patient display feeds?" If someone left vendor hardware, Russell was already radioing. Daniel turned toward the corridor. Evelyn caught his arm, not hard, just enough to make him look at her. "Daniel, if we send security rushing in, and someone inside panics." "I know." "Then we need police tactical support." "No." Grant snapped. "No." Daniel's eyes stayed on Evelyn. "You send armed panic into a room with a frightened child and a desperate intermediary. You turn leverage into a standoff. Voss wants escalation. He wants the hospital to look like chaos, me to look unstable, and Emma to become proof that I brought danger here. We do not give him the shape he wants." Evelyn let go slowly. "Then what do we do?" Daniel inhaled once. "We negotiate the room before we enter it." They moved back toward the command room, not because Daniel wanted to leave the trail, but because a negotiator needed a board, phones, maps, and people who could still follow orders. Every step away from Emma felt like betrayal. Every uncontrolled step toward her might make that betrayal permanent. Marion walked beside him, silent now, fierce in her own guilt. "I am coming," she said. "No," Daniel said. "You are staying where Emma expects safety to be. If she gets free, if she calls, if she runs, she comes back to a known adult. That's you." Marion looked ready to argue, then nodded. "Blue Fox rule?" "Blue Fox rule," Daniel said. "Safe adult, no wandering, quiet chair." In the command room, the glass wall still showed the crisis map. Care, containment, cause, communication. Daniel added a fifth word. Emma. Then he crossed it out and wrote Child Safety. Evelyn noticed the correction. "You made her part of the system." Daniel's voice was low. "No. I reminded myself she is not separate from it. That is what hospitals forget." They separate clinical from personal, personal from legal, legal from operational, operational from moral. Patients live where all of it meets. Russell projected the East Tower map. Aaron highlighted the old simulation suite, a rectangular room tucked behind radiology storage with 2 exits. One to a maintenance corridor, one to a locked data annex. If they're there, Aaron said, they can see some internal feeds, maybe not full records after shutdown. Audio? Daniel asked. Possibly. Phones, Russell said. Cell signal weak. Landline in the room if active. Evelyn said. Can we call it? Aaron checked. Extension 8842. It's listed inactive, but wiring may still work. Daniel looked at the phone on the table. Call it from an internal line. Record everything. No one speaks but me. Grant stepped forward. Daniel. If Emma hears multiple voices, she panics. If the person inside hears authority, they posture. If Voss is listening, he wants to pull us into his script. One voice. Evelyn nodded. Do it. Aaron dialed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Daniel stood with both hands flat on the table, head slightly bowed, eyes on the map. On the 4th ring, someone answered, no greeting, just breathing. Daniel spoke gently. This is Daniel Cross. I'm looking for my daughter. Silence. Then a woman's voice, tight and frightened. She's safe. Daniel closed his eyes for 1 second. Emma alive. Conscious likely. Woman under pressure. Thank you for telling me that. Everyone in the room stayed frozen. The woman seemed confused by gratitude. I said she's safe. I heard you. I'm Daniel. What's your name? No. That's okay. I'll call you Transport for now, unless you want another name. The woman's breathing hitched. You can't come here. I know. Evelyn stared at him. Daniel kept his voice soft. I'm not coming there right now. I'm on the phone. You and I are going to make sure Emma stays safe while the adults untangle the mess around you. There's no mess. There is always a mess when someone uses a child to send a message. A tiny sound came through the line. Not the woman. A small breath. Daniel's body wanted to move toward the sound. He did not. Emma, he said, still calm. If you can hear me, tap your fox twice. Silence. Then faintly, tap, tap. Daniel's hands pressed harder into the table. Nurse Ortiz turned away, eyes wet. Evelyn's face folded for a second before she forced it back. Good girl, Daniel said. Blue fox rule. Stay where you are. Breathe slow. The woman snapped. Don't talk to her. Daniel softened further. You're scared. I'm not. Then you're doing a very good imitation. The woman's breath shook. They said you would say that. They said you make people feel like they have choices until you take what you want. They lied to you about the ending. I don't take choices. I remove bad ones. You ruined everything downstairs. No. People got sick before I spoke. I just made the sickness harder to hide. You don't understand. Then help me. The room heard the shift. The woman did too. Silence stretched. Daniel let it. In negotiation, silence was not empty. It was where the other person found the next truth, if you did not rush to fill it with your own fear. Finally, she said, They have my brother. Evelyn's eyes moved to Russell. Russell began writing. Daniel did not look away from the phone. Who has your brother? I don't know names. Okay. What do they want you to do? Keep the girl until you stop the hospital review. Daniel felt the room tighten. He placed one hand in the air, palm down, telling them without words not to react. And if I don't? The woman swallowed audibly. They said they'll release my brother's immigration file to the police and say he stole medication. He didn't. He works loading dock nights. He just signed for boxes because I asked him to. I thought they were normal supplies. Daniel looked at Evelyn. Another link. Another coerced human body in the chain. What is your brother's name? No, I don't need it yet. You'll use it, not without your permission. Hospitals always say that. Daniel accepted the blow because it was earned by a world bigger than him. You're right to distrust hospitals. Today this hospital has earned distrust, but Emma has not. She is 7. She has asthma. She may look brave because she is polite, but fear tightens her breathing. If you want her safe, place her sitting upright, not curled. Keep her away from cleaning chemicals, strong perfume, dust, or cold air. Let her hold the fox. Do not make her lie down unless she asks. There was movement on the line. Fabric. A chair scraping. Then Emma's small voice, distant but clear enough to tear through him. "Daddy, I'm sitting," Daniel breathed out without sound. "Good. Are you wheezing?" "A little," the woman said sharply. "I didn't hurt her." Daniel answered the woman, not Emma. "I believe you. Find the small blue inhaler in her pouch. Ask Emma if it is the rescue one." A pause. Emma said, "It is." Daniel said, "Emma." One puff. Slow breath. Like we practiced. The line muffled. No one moved. Daniel waited through the longest 10 seconds of his life. Emma coughed once, then breathed. "Better," she said. The woman whispered, "I didn't know." "Now you do," Daniel said. "That is how we keep her safe. One correct action at a time." Grant leaned toward Evelyn and whispered, "We need to move." Daniel heard him, but he kept his focus on the woman. "Transport, listen to me. If they told you Emma was leverage, they also told you not to let anyone else speak to you. That means they need you alone. Isolation is how they control you. I want to add one person to the room who is on your side. No, not security, not police. A nurse. No. A nurse can check Emma's breathing and your pulse too. You sound like you might faint. I'm fine. You're not. You are breathing too fast. Your voice is shaking. And you just learned the people controlling you did not tell you a child had asthma. That means they withheld a medical risk from you. They made you more dangerous than you wanted to be." Silence. That landed. Daniel pressed carefully. "People who use you like that will use your brother the same way. Let us help both of you." The woman began to cry quietly, angry at herself for it. "If I open the door, they'll know." "How?" "There's a camera on the vendor laptop," Aaron mouthed. "Vendor hardware." Daniel nodded. "Can you turn the laptop away?" "They said not to touch it. Can Emma?" "No." Daniel's jaw tightened. Voss would expect him to use Emma. He would not. "Do not use Emma. Is there a jacket, towel, anything you can drop over the laptop without approaching it directly?" A pause. "There's a blanket." "Good. When you are ready, not before, you will drop the blanket over the laptop. Then you will sit back down. You will not open the door yet. First, you and I decide who enters. They'll hurt my brother." "What if we already protect him?" Daniel looked at Evelyn and pointed to Russell, then wrote "Loading Dock Brother" on the table pad. Russell nodded and left at a run. Evelyn whispered to Stephen Cole, "Immigration Council now. Employee protection. No calls to police about him without Patient Safety Command." Stephen, to his credit, did not argue. Daniel spoke into the phone again. "Transport. My team is locating the loading dock worker connected to the boxes. We will treat him as a witness, not a suspect. I need your help keeping him that way." She sobbed once. "My name is Claire." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. "Thank you, Claire." Evelyn wrote the name down. "Claire," Daniel continued, "I'm going to be honest with you. I can't promise no consequences. Anyone who promises that is selling you a lie. But I can promise this. If you help Emma walk out safely and tell the truth about how they pressured you, I will say in front of the CEO, legal counsel, security, nurses, physicians, and recordings that you asked for help, protected Emma's breathing, and cooperated before anyone forced the door." Claire whispered, "That matters? It matters more than you think. Because you're Dr. Mercer." The room held its breath. Daniel looked at the old name written nowhere but present everywhere. "Because I know what it feels like when powerful people decide your story before you speak." Claire cried harder then. "They said you killed a patient." Evelyn flinched as if struck. Grant looked down. Daniel's voice remained steady. "They say many things. Did you?" Emma's small voice came through before he could answer. "My dad helps people." Daniel shut his eyes. This time he could not fully hide the pain. "Emma," he said softly. "It's okay," she answered. And for a moment, the child in the hidden room sounded older than everyone around the conference table. "You told me old stories can be wrong if the wrong person keeps them," Claire whispered. She really believes you. Daniel opened his eyes. Yes. Why? Because I come home. The words broke something in Claire. The line filled with soft movement, a blanket shifting, a plastic laptop hinge creaking, then muffled sound. Aaron checked his screen. Remote feed from old simulation suite just went dark. Daniel held up a hand. No one moved yet. Claire, covered. Good. Step away from the laptop. Sit beside Emma, not behind her. Put the phone on speaker if it isn't. It is. Is the door locked from inside or outside? Both, I think. Badge panel. There's a manual latch, but it's taped. Russell returned breathless to the doorway and gave Evelyn a thumbs up, then mouthed, "Brother found." Safe. Evelyn wrote it and turned the pad toward Daniel. Daniel felt one piece of the knot loosen. "Claire, we found your brother. He is safe with security and medical staff. He is being treated as a witness." "No." "Yes." "Let me talk to him." "You will." First, Emma leaves the room. Claire hesitated. Daniel heard the fear return. He did not push. "What do they still have over you?" "A message. If I open the door before you stop the review, they release something." "What?" "A video of me moving boxes. It looks like I knew. You didn't. It won't matter." Daniel looked at Evelyn. "Miss Vale, say it." Evelyn stepped to the phone. Her voice was no longer CEO polished. It was direct, imperfect, and therefore useful. "Claire, this is Evelyn Vale. I am the person who allowed this hospital to trust systems and consultants that should have been challenged. I am telling you on a recorded line that if a video exists of you moving boxes, it will be treated in context with your cooperation, coercion, and patient safety actions. I will not let Voss Meridian or anyone in my family define you before we investigate." Claire said nothing. Evelyn continued, stronger now. "And if my cousin Owen used you, he will not be protected by my name." Daniel looked at her. "That was not sorry. That was better than sorry." Claire whispered, "The girl needs her dad." Daniel leaned toward the phone, and the command room vanished around him. "Yes," he said. "She does. There's a side door." Aaron pointed on the map. "Data Annex Exit." Claire said, "It has a keypad." Aaron typed quickly, "I can unlock it from here if the local relay is still connected. Do not unlock until Claire is away from the main door," Daniel said. "Claire, take Emma to the side door." Slowly. "Emma, take your fox and your pouch. Walk, don't run." Emma answered, "Okay. Tell me when you're there." The line filled with footsteps, small ones, adult ones, fabric rustle, a faint cough. Daniel counted each sound like a pulse. Evelyn stood beside him, one hand pressed to her mouth. Grant looked ready to sprint through the wall. Nurse Ortiz held a portable pediatric kit she must have grabbed without anyone noticing. Claire whispered, "We're here." Aaron said, "I have relay control." Daniel asked, "Claire, is anyone outside the side door?" "I don't know." Russell's radio crackled. "Team at Data Annex Corridor, standing down, no weapons drawn, nurse ready." Daniel said, "Aaron, unlock on my count. Claire, you will open the door and step back." Emma walks out first to Nurse Ortiz. You follow with hands visible, not because you are guilty, but because frightened security needs simple pictures. "Do you understand?" Claire breathed shakily. "Yes." "Emma?" "Yes, Daddy." "Blue Fox rule. Safe adult, no running. Good girl." Daniel looked at Aaron. 3, 2, 1. Aaron hit the key. Somewhere under the hospital, an old lock released. On the line, Daniel heard the door open, heard a hallway echo, heard Nurse Ortiz's voice in the distance, calm and warm. "Hi, Emma. I'm Lena. I have your dad's doctor voice approved." Emma said something too soft to hear. Then Nurse Ortiz's radio came alive from Russell's shoulder. "Child secure. Breathing okay. Mild wheeze stable. Claire cooperative." Daniel's knees nearly failed. He gripped the table, head lowered, and for the first time all day the room saw him not as the hidden doctor, not as the master negotiator, but as a father who had been holding himself together with thread. Evelyn whispered, "She's safe." Daniel nodded once, but he did not trust his voice yet. On the phone, Claire was crying openly now. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry." Daniel lifted the receiver again. "Claire, stay with Nurse Ortiz. Tell the truth in sequence. Do not skip the first small fear they used against you. That is where the chain begins. Will you talk to my brother?" "Yes." "Will Emma hate me?" Daniel looked toward the hall where his daughter was being brought back to him. "Emma has a better heart than most adults in this building, but your job is not to ask a child for forgiveness. Your job is to make sure no one else uses a child as a message." Claire sobbed once. "Okay." The call ended. For 3 seconds, the command room stood in silence. Then everything resumed at once. Russell confirming the old simulation suite was clear, Aaron preserving vendor hardware logs, Evelyn ordering a full lockdown of Voss Meridian access, Stephen drafting witness protection language instead of liability shields, Grant demanding updates on Harlan and the other exposed patients, and Daniel walking out before anyone could stop him. Emma was halfway down the corridor, wrapped in a pediatric blanket, Nurse Ortiz beside her, Marion behind them crying into one hand, and Russell keeping everyone else back. Emma saw Daniel and broke the blue fox rule immediately. She ran. Daniel dropped to his knees and caught her so hard the blanket slipped from her shoulders. She smelled like hospital cotton, fear, and the strawberry shampoo he bought when it was on sale. She was wheezing a little, but she was breathing. She was breathing. "I didn't run until I saw you," she mumbled into his shoulder. Daniel laughed once, broken and soft. Technically a violation. Worth it. He held her face in both hands, checking color, pupils, breath, the tiny tremor in her chin. "Did anyone touch you, hurt you, give you anything?" "No," Claire cried a lot. "She said bad people made her do it. I told her, Mrs. Alvarez says bad people are like mold. You have to show the wall to fix it." Daniel kissed her forehead. "Mrs. Alvarez is a public health genius." Emma looked past him at Evelyn, who stood several feet away, unable to approach. "Is she the lady who was mean?" Daniel glanced back. Evelyn did not defend herself. "Yes," he said. Emma studied her with the grave judgment of 7 years and too many hospital bracelets. "Are you still mean?" Evelyn's face changed in a way no boardroom had ever managed to make it change. "I am trying not to be." Emma considered that. "Trying counts if you keep doing it." Evelyn looked at Daniel, and he knew she had heard the echo. "I'll keep doing it," she said quietly. Daniel lifted Emma carefully, though she was getting too big for it, and though his back reminded him of every hour he had worked nights. Marion stepped forward. "I am so sorry." Emma reached one hand toward her. "It's okay. You came back." Marion began crying again. Nurse Ortiz checked Emma's breathing, nodded to Daniel, and gave him the small professional mercy of not saying aloud how close he had come to losing control. Grant appeared at the corridor corner. "Daniel." The way he said the name made Daniel turn. "Harlan is conscious. Not fully stable, but conscious. The discharged patient from rideshare is responding. Toxicology thinks we may be dealing with a contaminated antiemetic device combined with an additive exposure, but the pattern still has anomalies. And Tessa Klein says Evelyn Vale met with a Voss Meridian consultant inside the old simulation suite last night." Evelyn inhaled sharply. Daniel put Emma down slowly. "Name?" Grant checked his notes. "Sebastian Voss." "Of course." Daniel looked at Emma. "You're going with Marion and Nurse Ortiz to a secure pediatric room. Not a lounge. A real room. Door controlled. Mrs. Alvarez called, if possible." Emma's eyes narrowed. "You're going back?" "Yes." "Because the dragon still has a stomachache?" Daniel smiled faintly despite everything. "Because someone is feeding the dragon poison and calling it progress." Emma held up her stuffed fox. "Then use your doctor voice." Daniel touched the fox's worn ear. "I will." Evelyn stepped closer, but not too close. "Daniel, after what happened to Emma, no one would blame you if you stepped away." He looked at her, and for one terrifying second, she saw the full history of him. The doctor they buried, the father they threatened, the janitor they mocked, the negotiator they had forced back into the fire. "That is exactly why Voss used her," he said, "to make stepping away look reasonable." Grant's expression darkened. "Then what do we do?" Daniel looked down the corridor toward the command room, where the hospital's beautiful lies were waiting on the glass wall, mapped in marker and bloodless words. We stop reacting to Voss. How? Evelyn asked. Daniel's face hardened into the calm that had made powerful men fear conference calls. We make him react to us. 10 minutes later, Daniel stood back in the command room with Emma safe under Nurse Ortiz's watch, Claire in protective interview, her brother secured as a witness, and the old simulation suite sealed. The map had changed. Emma was no longer a missing point. She was a proof of method. Voss used exposure, coercion, false authority, system access, family pressure, and reputational fear. The same architecture as Hawthorne. The same architecture as today. Daniel wrote Hawthorne, Silverlight, Supply, Emma across the glass and drew lines between them. Evelyn watched each line connect like bones forming under an X-ray. It's the same playbook, she said. Daniel nodded. Different hospital, same negotiation. What was Hawthorne really? Grant asked. Daniel did not answer immediately. He looked at Evelyn. You said you would open the file. I will. Not later. Now. Stephen Cole objected instantly. The Hawthorne file is sealed under multiple agreements, involving the Vale Foundation, the governor's office, private insurers, and Evelyn turned on him. And Voss Meridian? Stephen's silence answered. Daniel looked at the legal counsel with no anger left, only precision. Find it. Stephen swallowed. It may not be in active archives. Evelyn said. My father kept a private board archive behind the old transplant conference room. Grant stared at her. You knew that? I knew it existed. I didn't know what was in it. Daniel picked up his marker one more time. Then we go there. Aaron looked up from his laptop. Before you do, there's something else. The vendor hardware from the simulation suite was streaming to an external endpoint until the blanket covered it. The endpoint dropped, but not before sending one final packet. What packet? Evelyn asked. Aaron turned the screen toward them. A file name sat in the transfer log. Mercer. Leverage. Final. Daniel's face went unreadable. Grant whispered, What is in it? Aaron hesitated. It's encrypted. But the preview metadata shows images, PDFs, and one video. Evelyn looked at Daniel. Hawthorne. Daniel stared at the file name, at the word leverage, at the old fear dressed in new code. Maybe. Then the file preview loaded one thumbnail before the encryption locked it fully. Daniel saw a hospital room from 7 years ago, a young man on a ventilator, himself in a white coat, and Evelyn Vale's father standing in the corner of the frame. Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth. My father was there? Daniel's voice was very quiet. He told the inquiry he wasn't. The room fell into a silence deeper than shock. Outside the command room, Street Aurelius continued to move around them. Patients returning, nurses calling, doctors reassessing, systems offline, truth crawling out from places built to hide it. Daniel looked at Evelyn, and for the first time she understood that saving the hospital and exposing her family might be the same act. Open the private archive, he said. And this time, nobody leaves the room with the truth. The old transplant conference room sat behind 2 locked doors and a hallway that had been renovated everywhere, except where money had decided memory was cheaper to cover than remove. The east tower gleamed with glass, touchscreens, and brushed steel, but this corridor still carried the older hospital smell beneath the disinfectant, paper files, stale coffee, cold radiator metal, and the faint dust of rooms powerful people believed would never be opened by anyone they had harmed. Daniel Cross walked at the front with Evelyn Vale beside him, Dr. Malcolm Grant behind them, Nurse Lena Ortiz remaining with Emma in the secure pediatric room only because Daniel had looked at her and she had said, I know, safe adult, no wandering, before he could ask. Russell from security led with a master badge. Stephen Cole followed with a sealed evidence bag and the expression of a man whose entire career had been built on carefully closing doors that were now opening by force. Aaron Feld came last, laptop clutched to his chest, still shaken by the encrypted file name that had pulled Hawthorne back into the room like a body from deep water. Mercer, leverage, final. Daniel had not said the words again. He did not need to. They traveled with him. Evelyn stopped at the final door, a plain beige slab with no nameplate, only an old keypad and a black reader mounted too high on the wall. "My father used to call this the legacy room," she said. "I thought it was where he kept donor plaques and old board recordings." Daniel looked at the keypad. "Men like your father do not build secret rooms for plaques." She accepted that without defending him. That, too, was new. Russell scanned his badge. The reader blinked red. He tried again. Red. "Access disabled," he said. Aaron stepped forward. "If it's off the current badge system, it may be on the old transplant admin network." Stephen cleared his throat. "Before we force entry, I need to state for the record that private Foundation archives may contain protected material, privileged communications, and documents governed by sealed agreements." Daniel turned slowly. "Stephen, if another person says sealed agreement before saying patient, I am going to start writing down the order in which this hospital learned its morals." Stephen went silent. Evelyn reached past him, took the evidence bag from his hand, and held it herself. "Open the door." Aaron knelt at the access panel and removed the cover with a tiny screwdriver borrowed from Daniel's pocket. Grant watched the old tool appear from the janitor's uniform and gave Daniel a sideways look. "You carry a screwdriver? Hospitals are full of things that should open and don't." "That explains more than it should." Daniel almost smiled. Almost. Aaron bridged the old reader through his laptop, fingers moving quickly. "This is ancient. No multi-factor, no remote logging, just local access and a silent audit cache." Evelyn's mouth tightened. "Convenient." Daniel said. "Not convenient. Intentional." The lock clicked. The sound was small, but Evelyn flinched as if the door had spoken her father's name. Russell opened it. The room beyond was dark until he found the switch. Fluorescent lights flickered awake in strips, revealing a conference room from another decade. A long table, old leather chairs, a wall of metal cabinets, a projector cart, 2 locked rolling archives, bankers' boxes stacked with dates written in careful black marker, and on the far wall, a framed photograph of Evelyn's father, Dr. Conrad Vale, shaking hands with a governor whose son would die 3 months later under a story Daniel had carried like a stone in his chest for 7 years. Evelyn stared at the photograph. "He told me he barely knew the Hawthorns." Daniel stepped inside. "That was the first lie you were meant to inherit." Grant closed the door behind them. Russell stationed himself beside it. Aaron began scanning for live devices. Stephen opened a recording app, then looked at Daniel for permission without quite realizing he had done it. Daniel nodded. "Everything in this room is preserved. No one removes documents except into evidence bags. Evelyn, you read labels. Grant, look for clinical files. Stephen, privileged or not, you mark chain of custody. Russell, photograph every cabinet before opening. Aaron, find any drives, tapes, or hidden network devices. I'll take the boxes with Hawthorne dates." Grant bristled automatically. "You're giving orders again." Daniel looked at him. "Then improve them." Grant held his gaze, then turned toward the metal cabinets. "Fine, I'll improve them by adding gloves." He pulled a box from a wall dispenser and tossed a pair to Daniel. That, too, was progress. Evelyn moved to the first banker's box. Foundation Risk Review, 2019. Donor Adverse Events, 2020. Silverlight Early Concerns, 2024. She stopped on the last one. Daniel looked up. "Open that after Hawthorne." "Why after?" "Because Voss builds bridges between scandals. Hawthorne tells us what kind of bridge to look for." Stephen opened a rolling archive and read the folders aloud in a voice that became thinner with each title. Hawthorne Family Settlement, External Review Draft, Mercer Credential Review, Media Stabilization Plan, Pediatric Coverage Correspondence. Daniel's hand stilled over a box. Evelyn looked at him sharply. "Pediatric coverage?" Daniel did not move. Stephen swallowed. "That may refer to Foundation reimbursement programs." Daniel's voice was quiet. "Read the date." Stephen did. It was 2 days after Daniel refused to sign the final Hawthorne statement. The room changed. Evelyn looked at Daniel with a horror that was no longer institutional. "They threatened Emma's coverage in writing?" Daniel's face remained calm, but the calm was now a locked door with something violent behind it. "They never had to write it directly. Men like Voss write pressure like a doctor writes symptoms. Enough to guide the diagnosis, not enough to confess the disease. Grant pulled a folder from the clinical cabinet. I have Hawthorne Clinical Reconstruction. He opened it, scanned the first page, and his expression shifted from professional skepticism to alarm. This is not the version I remember from journal discussions. Daniel did not ask to see it yet. He needed Grant to arrive on his own. What does it say? Grant read slowly. Patient. Caleb Hawthorne, 22. Post-procedure deterioration, suspected adverse reaction, conflicting consultant recommendations, protocol deviation attributed to attending consultant Daniel Mercer. He flipped ahead, but there are handwritten addenda, multiple early warning signs flagged by nursing, delayed toxicology consult, medication, reconciliation, incomplete, experimental adjunct administered under compassionate protocol before Mercer arrived. Evelyn whispered, "Before." Grant looked up. "Before." Daniel finally took the file. He had imagined this moment for 7 years and discovered imagination had not prepared him for paper. Paper was worse. Paper did not shout. Paper did not apologize. Paper simply sat in your hands and proved that people had known. He read the first page, then the second. There it was, the missing timeline. Caleb Hawthorne had received an off-label adjunct connected to a donor-funded neurological recovery trial before Daniel had been called to mediate the family's refusal of escalation. The trial supply had come through a foundation-backed access pathway. Conrad Vale's signature was on the authorization. Voss Meridian had been retained 26 minutes after the first internal note mentioned fatal exposure risk. Daniel looked at Evelyn. She had gone pale enough that Russell stepped closer, but she waved him back. My father authorized it. Daniel said nothing. Daniel. Yes. He let you take the blame. Daniel looked back at the file. He did not let me. He arranged it. Stephen found another folder. Media stabilization plan. He opened it with visible dread. Talking points. Brilliant but unstable consultant. Overstepped protocol. Family's grief should not be politicized. Protect foundation continuity. Avoid broader review of access program. Grant's voice was low. They wrote your ruin like a press release. Daniel turned a page. They wrote Emma into it too. Evelyn reached for the pediatric coverage correspondence with hands that shook. Inside were letters, not threats in plain language, but inquiries, delays, reviews, coverage audits, foundation grant reconsiderations, and one handwritten note from Conrad Vale to Voss. Mercer's child creates leverage. Keep pressure administrative, not personal. Evelyn made a sound that was not quite a sob. She put the page down as if it burned. I don't know how to carry this. Daniel looked at her, and for a moment the room held two kinds of children. Emma, hidden safely under Nurse Ortiz's watch, and Evelyn Vale, standing in the ruins of the father she had defended by inheritance. You don't carry it, he said. You stop passing it forward. Grant, who had grown very still, lifted the clinical reconstruction. Daniel, the protocol deviation that got cited against you. According to this, you objected to the medication pathway and pushed for toxicology. Daniel nodded once. Yes. And they framed that as overreach. Yes. Why didn't you fight? Daniel almost laughed, but there was no humor in him. I did. In every room that was not recorded. That was my mistake. Aaron suddenly spoke from the far wall. There is a hidden drive dock behind the projector cabinet. Russell moved with him. They pulled the cabinet away from the wall, revealing a recessed panel with 3 old external drives and a small black recording unit. Aaron examined it. Local archive. Air-gapped. This room was used to review sensitive video without network logging. Evelyn turned. Can you access it? Maybe. But if it's tied to the encrypted file metadata, we should image it first. Daniel nodded. Image, then open. Stephen said, this is now evidence in both patient safety and possible criminal matters. Daniel looked at him. Good. You found the word possible before the word liability. Stephen surprised everyone by nodding. I'm learning. While Aaron worked, Evelyn opened the Silverlight Early Concerns box. The first folder contained board notes. She read silently, her face tightening line by line. Pilot reports from nurses were downgraded as subjective variance. False negative risk raised by Clinical Safety Subcommittee. Voss Meridian recommendation: suppress non-critical alert noise during high-visibility launch windows. Evelyn Vale response: acceptable if manual override remains available to leadership. Grant slammed a hand on the cabinet. Leadership? Not clinicians? Evelyn turned another page. My signature approved the revised launch timeline. She looked at Daniel. I didn't read the appendix. That is not a defense. I know. Her voice broke on the second word. I know. Daniel, let that stand. Guilt could be useful if it moved. Useless if it knelt and asked to be admired. Evelyn kept reading. There's a clause here. Vendor support retained emergency access during first 90 days to protect continuity and stabilize public demonstration metrics. Aaron swore softly. That's how they got in. Daniel walked to the glassless wall where an old whiteboard still hung, stained with marker ghosts from years before. He wrote 2 chains. Hawthorne, Foundation Access Program, Unsafe Adjunct, Early Warnings, Buried Mercer, Blamed Coverage Pressure. Then beneath it, Silverlight, Vendor Access Alert Suppression, Suspect Product Chain Nurse Warnings, Buried Patients, Discharged Mercer Targeted. Grant read the 2 chains and went quiet. Same structure. Same business model, Daniel said. A mistake becomes survivable if blamed on one person. A system becomes untouchable if everyone owns a small enough piece of the harm. Evelyn stared at the board. And Voss sells that survival. Yes, to families like mine. To institutions afraid of being seen clearly. Aaron finished imaging the first drive. Opening video index now. The old monitor on the projector cart flickered alive, showing file folders sorted by date. Hawthorne, Mercer, Foundation Access, Media Prep. Daniel felt his body become too still. Evelyn noticed. You do not have to watch. He looked at her. Yes, I do. Aaron opened the Hawthorne folder. The first video was a conference room recording, grainy, angled high. Conrad Vale sat at the head of a table. Sebastian Voss stood near the window, younger by 7 years but already perfectly composed. Daniel Mercer appeared on screen in a white coat, tired, furious, alive with the kind of moral certainty that had not yet learned how thoroughly it could be punished. The video had no sound for the first few seconds. Then Aaron adjusted the track. Daniel's younger voice filled the room. You gave an experimental adjunct before confirming the metabolic pathway and then waited 4 hours to call toxicology. That is not a protocol error. That is a cover-up in progress. Evelyn's hand went to her mouth. Grant stared. On screen, Conrad Vale said, Careful, doctor. Younger Daniel stepped forward. No, careful was 4 hours ago. Voss's voice entered, smooth and patient. Dr. Mercer, the family needs unity, not accusation. The family needs truth. Conrad Vale leaned back. The family needs hope. Younger Daniel replied, Hope without truth is fraud. The video cut abruptly. Aaron opened the next clip. This one showed Voss and Conrad after Daniel had left. Voss said, He will not sign. Conrad answered, Then make him isolated, not destroyed. Isolated. A martyr is expensive. Voss smiled. His daughter's coverage review begins tomorrow. Evelyn turned away as if she might be sick. Daniel watched the screen without blinking. Grant whispered, God. Daniel said, God was not in that room. Aaron clicked the next file. A draft statement appeared, then emails, then a scan of Daniel's refusal, then an unsigned version of the final public narrative that would ruin his career. Stephen began photographing every screen. His hands shook. This clears you, he said. Not publicly yet. Daniel turned. Not if it stays in this room. Evelyn faced him, tears now visible but not falling. It will not stay in this room. Russell's radio crackled. He answered, listened, and looked up sharply. Evelyn Vale has been located. Evelyn straightened. Where? Off-site. Private aviation terminal across the river. He's trying to board a charter. Stop him. Port Authority notified. But there's more. He claims he has documents proving the Silverlight breach was Daniel's revenge attack. Grant spun toward Daniel. What? Aaron grabbed his laptop. Impossible. Unless they planted credential traces. Daniel did not look surprised. They did. Evelyn's voice went cold. How do you know? Because Voss called the file Mercer, leverage, final, before he needed it. He was not improvising. He was finishing a frame he started years ago. Grant looked toward the monitor, then toward the crisis map. They were going to blame you for the breach. And possibly the supply event. Doctor? Nair's voice came through Grant's phone on speaker from the command room. Daniel, we have preliminary lab screening on one recovered device. The contents do not match the labeled medication concentration. There are impurities. Toxicology says patients need continued monitoring, but early supportive changes are helping. Also, one returned discharged patient said a man in a suit told him not to answer hospital calls because the hospital would bill him twice. Evelyn closed her eyes in disgust. Daniel said, Voss wanted the sick patients unreachable. Grant spoke into the phone. Keep recalls going. Use community welfare checks if they don't answer. No billing threats. No insurance language. Dr. Nair said, already done. Daniel glanced at Grant. Good, Grant frowned. Don't sound surprised. I'm not. I'm marking improvement. You are impossible. Often useful, though. For the first time all day, Grant almost smiled. Then Aaron's laptop pinged. The encrypted Mercer, leverage, final packet is attempting remote wipe from external source. Disconnect, Russell said. Aaron yanked the cable and killed wireless. It's air, gapped now. Can you open it? Daniel asked. Aaron looked at the old drives, then at the packet. With the local archive keys, maybe. The metadata matches the recording unit. Evelyn stepped closer. Do it. Stephen lifted a hand. If the file contains manipulated evidence, Evelyn cut him off. Then we prove manipulation. Aaron began the decryption. The progress bar crawled. Daniel used the waiting time because waiting was where fear bred. Evelyn, call Howard Pike back. The board chair? Yes. Why? Because he will be hearing Owen's version soon. We give him truth first, with evidence preserved and witnesses present. Stephen said, that is risky. Daniel looked at him. So is silence. Silence is Voss's favorite co-counsel. Evelyn dialed. Pike answered on the first ring, angry already. Evelyn, Owen says Mercer has compromised hospital systems and coerced you into shutting down Silverlight. He says, Howard, Evelyn said, steady but pale, you are on speaker in the Legacy Archive room with Daniel Mercer, Dr. Grant, Stephen Cole, security, and technical staff. We have found recordings and documents proving the Hawthorne case was manipulated by Voss Meridian and my father, that Daniel Mercer objected to the unsafe pathway, and that his daughter's medical coverage was used as leverage. We have also found Silverlight launch documents showing alert suppression, vendor access risks, and Voss Meridian involvement. Pike said nothing. Evelyn continued. Owen is attempting to flee and is claiming Daniel caused the breach. Preserve every board communication with Evelyn Vale and Voss Meridian immediately. Pike's voice changed into boardroom caution. Evelyn, you need to stop speaking. No, I needed to start speaking years ago. Daniel watched her carefully. She was not performing contrition. She was burning bridges behind herself, which was often the only way powerful people learned direction. Pike said, this could destroy the hospital. Daniel stepped toward the phone. No, the harm could destroy the hospital. The truth is only where you begin rebuilding or where you prove you never deserved one. Pike exhaled. Mercer, Pike, if this is real, it is, then send evidence to independent counsel and health authorities before anyone can bury it. Daniel glanced at Evelyn. She nodded. That, Daniel said, is the first useful thing you've said today. Pike gave a short, bitter laugh. You haven't changed. I have. I'm poorer. The line went quiet. Then Pike said, I'll preserve the board archive. Evelyn ended the call. Aaron's laptop chimed. The file opened. The first folder was labeled Hawthorne, Final, Frame. Inside were edited clips, draft narratives, insurance pressure memos, and a proposed timeline that removed Conrad Vale's presence entirely. The second folder was labeled Silverlight, Failsafe. It contained prepared screenshots showing Daniel's employee login routed through a maintenance terminal into the Silverlight support layer. Aaron leaned close, horrified. This is fabricated. They created a fake access trail using his facilities badge. Russell said, "A janitor badge can't access clinical intelligence." Aaron nodded. "Exactly. But to a board, to media, to police who don't understand the system, it would look like he planted malware after being humiliated." Stephen said, "The revenge narrative." Evelyn looked at Daniel. "They expected you to intervene." Daniel shook his head. "No, they expected me to stay hidden. The frame was insurance in case I didn't." Grant's phone buzzed again. He checked it. "Harlan is asking for you." Daniel frowned. "Me?" "He's conscious enough to demand the janitor doctor." Evelyn looked almost relieved by the absurdity. Daniel did not move. "Not yet." Grant stared. "He's the donor at the center of... He is one patient among many." Grant's mouth closed. He nodded slowly. "Right." Daniel looked at the recovered files. "We need Owen stopped, Voss exposed, patient stabilized, and Hawthorne released through channels strong enough to survive attack. But before all of that, we need one more thing." Evelyn said, "What?" Daniel pointed to the folder labeled Silverlight, Failsafe. "The fake trail shows how they plan to frame me. Somewhere there is a real trail showing who built the frame. Aaron, compare creation timestamps, editing machine IDs, and certificate signatures. Russell, preserve badge logs. Stephen, create an evidence transfer package. Evelyn, authorize external forensic review in writing. Grant, return to patients. The archive matters, but living people matter more." Grant did not argue. "You coming?" "In a minute." Grant left, and for the first time he left like a colleague, not a rival. Evelyn remained. "Daniel," she said quietly, "I found my father in the room that destroyed your life." Daniel looked at Conrad Vale's photograph on the wall. "Yes, and you still saved my hospital." "No," he said again, tired now. "I helped save patients. Why keep correcting me?" "Because if you say hospital enough, you will forget the faces inside it." Evelyn absorbed that like a sentence she deserved. Aaron called from the laptop. "I have the creator's signature on the fake access trail." Daniel turned. "Who?" Aaron looked from Daniel to Evelyn. "Owen Vale initiated, but the certificate authority was Voss Meridian, and there's a third approval token." Evelyn's voice dropped. "My father is dead. It can't be him." Aaron swallowed. "It isn't." Stephen leaned over the screen. "The token belongs to Howard Pike." The room went silent. Daniel's eyes narrowed. The useful board chair. The man who had just told them to preserve the archive. The man who had shifted too quickly from outrage to cooperation. Negotiation Rule 2. When an opponent gives you exactly the right advice at exactly the right time, ask what they are trying to move you away from. Evelyn looked toward the phone she had just used. "He told us to send everything out." Daniel nodded slowly. "Because he wanted us to move the evidence package through a channel he controls." Russell cursed. Aaron checked network logs. A transfer request just opened from the board archive portal. Stephen looked sick. "He's trying to copy or corrupt the evidence." Daniel grabbed the old archive drive and placed it in Stephen's evidence bag. Air gap everything. No board portal. No foundation council. No internal archive transfer. Physical evidence only. Evelyn was already dialing Russell's security command. "Lock Howard Pike out of every hospital system." Daniel stopped her with 2 words. "Not yet." She stared at him. "Daniel, he's part of it." "Yes, and he does not know we know." The room changed again, drawn by the gravity of his calm. Daniel picked up the phone, looked at Evelyn, then at Russell. "We need Pike to reveal whether he is protecting Owen, Voss, or himself. We let him think the package is moving." Stephen whispered, "A controlled disclosure trap." Daniel looked at him. "You're improving too." Evelyn's face hardened. "What do you need?" Daniel walked to the old whiteboard and wrote one final line beneath Hawthorne and Silverlight. "Pike Voss Owen? I need a fake evidence transfer, a recorded call, a locked archive, and a room full of people who can keep their voices steady while a powerful man explains which truth he is most afraid of." Aaron said, I can simulate the transfer. Russell said, I can record and trace. Stephen said, I can witness. Evelyn said, I can call him. Daniel looked at her. No. He expects you emotional now. He expects me angry. Grant is with patience. Stephen is legal. Aaron is technical. Russell is security. Pike will posture with all of you. Then who calls? Daniel looked at the Hawthorne video frozen on the screen, at his younger self in a white coat still fighting in a room that had already chosen betrayal. The dead man, he said. Evelyn frowned. Daniel picked up the phone. Dr. Mercer calls. The room seemed to understand at once that Daniel was not reclaiming the name as pride. He was using it as a scalpel. Russell set the trace. Aaron staged the fake transfer. Stephen began recording. Evelyn stood beside the table, looking at Daniel as if she were watching a buried witness take the stand. Daniel dialed Howard Pike's direct line from the legacy room phone. Pike answered after 2 rings. Evelyn? Daniel smiled faintly. No, Howard. It's Mercer. The silence on the other end was small but perfect. I thought you would be busy sending evidence. I was. Then I noticed your token in the frame. Pike did not breathe for 1 second. Daniel's voice stayed almost gentle. Here is how this negotiation works. You can tell me whether Voss owns Owen, you, or the board majority, and in return I decide whether your cooperation begins before or after federal investigators hear this call. Pike's voice came back colder. You always overplay morality. And you always mistake it for weakness. You have no idea what you are standing in. Daniel looked around the legacy room, at the boxes, the videos, the truth that had survived, because men like Pike always believed future control would be easier than present honesty. I know exactly what I'm standing in. A room full of ghosts you forgot to cremate. Pike's voice lowered. If that evidence leaves the hospital, the institution collapses. If it stays hidden, patients do. Voss can bury you again. He tried. He used my daughter. That ends the old terms. Pike said nothing. Daniel pressed, quiet and precise. Where is Owen going? A pause. Too long. I don't know. Daniel looked at Russell. Russell shook his head. Lie. Wrong answer, Daniel said. Pike exhaled. Private terminal was a decoy. Owen is still in the city. Evelyn's eyes widened. Russell began writing fast. Daniel asked, Where? Pike said, If I tell you, Voss releases the board files. If you don't, I release Hawthorne, Silverlight, and the pediatric leverage memo with your approval token beside them. Pike's voice cracked at the edges. You think truth saves people? It doesn't. It only changes who bleeds. Daniel looked through the conference room glass toward the hospital where Emma waited, where patients fought through exposure, where nurses called frightened strangers back from cars and apartments and sidewalks. Then let it bleed upward for once. Pike was silent. Then he gave an address, a closed outpatient surgery center owned by a Vale Foundation shell company, 6 blocks away. Owen was there, with Voss Meridian staff, remote access equipment, and the real source logs. Russell sent the address before Pike finished speaking. Evelyn's face went white with fury. Daniel asked one more question. Why today? Pike laughed bitterly. Because Silverlight was going national after this launch. Because Harlan wanted leverage over Voss. Because Owen wanted his cut. Because Evelyn wanted her father's portrait to mean something. Because you showed up in a janitor uniform and made the machine look stupid before the deal closed. Daniel glanced at Evelyn. She did not look away from her guilt. And the patients? Daniel asked. Pike's voice was almost a whisper. Collateral. Daniel ended the call. No final threat. No dramatic line. Some words did not deserve to be the last word in a room. Russell was already moving. Security and law enforcement are heading to the address. Port Authority still watching the decoy. Aaron said, Fake transfer held. Evidence intact. Stephen sealed the bag. Evelyn turned to Daniel. Pike called patients collateral. Daniel put the phone down. Now you know what your hospital sounded like when it thought no patient was in the room. She took the blow. Then Grant's voice came through the radio, urgent but controlled. Daniel, Harlan is stable enough to speak, and he says he knows why his company label was on the boxes. Also, We have another patient crashing in East Observation. We need you back. Daniel looked once at the Hawthorne file, once at Conrad Vale's photograph, then at Evelyn. Take the archive. Guard it with people who do not owe your family anything. And you? She asked. Daniel was already walking toward the door. I go back to the living. Daniel Cross returned to the living through a corridor full of people who had begun the morning stepping around him, and now stepped aside as if his gray janitor's uniform were not cloth but command. He hated that almost as much as he needed it. Hospitals were dangerous when they worshipped titles, but they were also dangerous when they replaced one kind of worship with another. He did not want awe. Awe made people wait for miracles. He wanted motion, questions, hands doing the next correct thing. The East Observation Unit had been transformed into a holding pattern for the kind of crisis Street Aurelius had never rehearsed, because rehearsal required admitting that the future could fail. Nurses moved between beds with paper checklists taped to clipboards. Residents who had trusted dashboards all morning were now learning to look at faces, hands, breathing, skin, tremor, pupils, and the tiny hesitations in a patient's answer before a lab result arrived to make them feel safe. Dr. Malcolm Grant stood at the central station, sleeves rolled, tie gone, hair less perfect, eyes sharp in a different way now. Not humbled enough to be comfortable, but humbled enough to be useful. He saw Daniel and pointed toward the far bay. Patient from rideshare pickup is crashing again. Not the same rhythm as Harlan. Pressure swings, confusion worse, tremor stronger. Toxicology is still working from mixed exposure. We are supporting, but something doesn't fit. Daniel did not answer immediately. He looked through the glass at the patient. A man in his 50s, gray at the beard, conscious but slipping, one hand twitching against the sheet, while his wife stood outside the bay crying into a mask. Daniel watched the monitor, then the patient, then the nurse's handwritten timeline taped beside the bed. He had learned long ago that a monitor told you what was happening now, a chart told you what people thought had happened, and a frightened spouse often told you what actually changed. "Who's the wife?" he asked. Grant blinked, thrown by the question. "Linda Shaw. Bring her close but keep her seated." "She's upset." "Good. Upset people remember details, polished people edit." Nurse Ortiz had rejoined them from pediatrics after personally confirming Emma was safe with Marion and Mrs. Alvarez on video call. She appeared at Daniel's side with a pediatric blanket still folded under one arm, as if she had forgotten to set it down. "Emma is stable. She told me to tell you the dragon is still sick, but not dead." Daniel closed his eyes for half a second. "She said that?" "She also said you need water." Daniel looked at the bottle Nurse Ortiz shoved into his hand. "She outranks you?" "Today?" "Absolutely." He drank because refusing would waste time. Linda Shaw was brought to a chair beside the observation bay, hands twisting together, eyes moving from her husband to Daniel's uniform, and then to Grant's face, searching for the person in charge, and not knowing what to do when the answer seemed to be both the doctor and the janitor. Daniel crouched, so he was below her eye line. "Mrs. Shaw, I'm Daniel. I need the last normal moment before your husband became ill." "He came in for chest pressure," she said quickly. "He thought it was indigestion. They said it wasn't a heart attack. They gave him something because he felt sick after waiting. Then the computer said he could go. Before he came in, was he confused? No. Tremor? No. Metallic taste?" She hesitated. "He said the water tasted like pennies after the nurse gave him medicine. I thought he was joking." Grant looked at Daniel. Daniel kept his eyes on her. "Did he take anything else today? Supplements, energy drinks, new prescriptions, vitamins, anything from work?" "No. He's a school bus mechanic. He hates pills. He only came because our daughter begged him." "Where was he sitting in East Intake?" "Near the vending machines." "The chair with the torn arm," Nurse Ortiz wrote without being asked. Daniel said, "Did anyone move him?" "A man in a suit came by once and asked if he had signed a satisfaction survey. My husband said no." The man looked at his wristband and left. The room sharpened. Grant leaned closer. "What man?" "I don't know. Not a doctor. Too shiny." Nurse Ortiz muttered, "That narrows it to half the building." Daniel asked, "Did he touch the medication cart? The trash? Your husband's wristband?" Linda closed her eyes, trying to remember. He touched the clipboard at the foot of the bed. No, wait. He peeled something off the side and said the barcode was crooked. Aaron Feld's voice came through the command room line on Grant's phone. Daniel, if someone changed the bedside barcode, the system could attach exposure data to the wrong patient. Daniel stood slowly. Grant, get every physical wristband and medication scan label from East Intake preserved. Not just digital logs. Physical labels. Grant was already pointing. Do it. Daniel looked back at Linda. You helped. She began to cry harder. Is he going to die? Daniel did not lie. He is very sick, but now he is less invisible. It was the only promise he could make. He stepped into the bay with Grant's permission, not as a physician taking over, but as a consultant forcing the room to widen its lens. He did not touch the patient. He watched. His presentation is stronger than Harlan's, Daniel said. Why? Grant answered, thinking aloud now, no longer performing certainty. Different dose, different product, longer delay, underlying vulnerability, Nurse Ortiz added. Or he got the real bad device, and Harlan got partial exposure. Daniel looked at the patient's hand, the tremor, then the timeline. Or the label swap means we are assigning the wrong exposure sequence. The system may have hidden not just patients, but which patient got what. Doctor, Nair's voice joined through speaker from pharmacy. That would explain inconsistent lot mapping. We found 2 device shells in waste, but one label doesn't match the patient record. Someone physically moved labels between devices. Grant swore. Daniel's mind clicked one piece into the next. Voss did not only want patients sick, he wanted the evidence chain confused enough that every conclusion could be challenged. This was built for doubt, Daniel said. Evelyn, listening from the command room, answered through the line. Say that again. The supply event made patients sick. The label swaps made causation messy. The AI suppression scattered the symptoms. The fake Mercer trail gave them a villain. The Emma abduction was pressure if I moved too close. Hawthorne evidence was leverage if I survived the first frame. Every layer creates doubt around the layer beneath it. Grant stared at him. That's not a cover-up. That's an architecture. Yes. Who builds something like that? Daniel looked toward the hospital windows, where the city glowed beyond the glass, indifferent and enormous. Someone who sells escape routes to guilty people. The patient in the bay worsened suddenly, and the room surged into motion. Grant and his team worked, fast and focused, adjusting support under toxicology guidance, ruling out the pathways that no longer fit, pulling a bedside ultrasound, checking perfusion, reassessing neurological signs, listening to the nurse who said, his tremor changed after that last movement. Instead of dismissing it as noise, Daniel stepped back and let clinicians be clinicians. That mattered. He could guide the map. He could not let the hospital turn his hidden expertise into another excuse to stop owning its work. Minutes stretched. Linda Shaw sobbed silently into her hands. Nurse Ortiz stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder, eyes still on the bay. Finally, the patient's most dangerous swing eased. Not stable, not safe, but held. Grant stepped out, breathing hard. He's responding. Daniel nodded. Because you changed the question. Grant wiped his forehead with his sleeve. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. Grant looked through the glass at his team, then back at Daniel. I spent this morning ready to have you dragged out. I noticed. I would have killed him. Daniel did not soften the truth. Maybe. Grant flinched. You could lie. You do not need comfort more than you need memory. Grant nodded slowly, anger turning inward. Then I'll remember. Evelyn arrived from the command room with Russell, her face set in a way Daniel now recognized as the look of a woman choosing damage over denial. Port Authority confirmed the private terminal was a decoy. Owen's phone pinged near the outpatient surgery center Pike gave us. Law enforcement is surrounding the building, but no entry yet. They found a Voss Meridian vehicle in the service lot. Do not storm it, Daniel said. Russell nodded. They're holding, Evelyn continued. Howard Pike's board access is frozen quietly. He doesn't know yet. Stephen is preparing the evidence package for external transfer by courier, not network. Aaron found the real certificate chain tying Voss Meridian to the fake Mercer trail. Good. And Harlan wants to talk to you now. Daniel looked at Grant. Grant shrugged. He asked twice. He's conscious, angry, and rich enough to become everyone's problem if ignored. Daniel almost smiled. Angry is useful, if pointed correctly. Evelyn said, "There is something you should know before you speak to him." Harlan Biotech's label was on the counterfeit shipping boxes because Owen used one of Harlan's dormant subsidiaries as a shell vendor. But Harlan may not be innocent. He invested in Silverlight's national rollout and had a side agreement with Voss Meridian to protect market confidence. Daniel absorbed that. So the man we saved may have helped build the machine that endangered others. Yes. Then we ask him better questions too. Victor Harlan lay in a private ICU bay with more wires than dignity, though wealth had still managed to place him in the quietest corner of disaster. His face was ashen, his silver hair damp, his hand trembling slightly against the blanket. A nurse stood beside him, and to Daniel's relief, it was not a VIP liaison but one of Ortiz's people, practical and unimpressed. Harlan's eyes opened as Daniel entered with Evelyn and Grant. "You," he rasped. "The janitor." Daniel stopped at the foot of the bed. "Environmental services." Harlan tried to laugh and winced. "You saved my life. Your nurses and doctors are saving your life. I interrupted a bad story." Harlan's eyes shifted to Evelyn. "Is he always like this?" Evelyn's answer was immediate. "Worse when correct." Harlan looked back at Daniel. "I heard my company name is on the boxes. A shell company connected to your corporate structure was used." "Without my approval." Daniel pulled a chair closer, but did not sit. "That is a sentence lawyers like. I need one patience can use." Harlan's mouth tightened. "What do you want?" "A list of every dormant subsidiary, Evelyn Vale or Voss Meridian, could access through your investment agreements. Every side letter tied to Silverlight's rollout, every risk memo about alert suppression, every communication about today's launch, and the name of the person who told you to keep Voss close." Harlan stared at him. "You think I caused this?" "I think you financed something you did not understand because people told you it would make hospitals predictable and profitable. I think you heard enough concerns to protect yourself but not enough patience. I think someone used your structure to move counterfeit or altered medical devices. I think you are alive because the nurses your business model discounted kept seeing what your system blurred. And I think if you make this about innocence, you will waste the part of your life we just got back." Grant looked at Daniel as if even he would not have dared say it that plainly to a billionaire donor. Harlan's face darkened. "You have no idea what I risked funding Silverlight." Daniel leaned closer. "Mr. Harlan, risk is what happens to your body when your pulse will not hold. Investment loss is something else." The nurse beside the bed made a small sound that might have been a cough or approval. Harlan's eyes flicked to her, then back to Daniel. "Mercer," he said, voice weaker but sharper. "That's who you are. I remember the Hawthorne scandal. Then remember it accurately this time." Harlan looked at Evelyn. "Conrad Vale buried that." Evelyn did not flinch. "We found the archive." Harlan's expression changed. Not shock, recognition. Daniel saw it immediately. "You knew there was an archive." Harlan closed his eyes. "I knew Conrad kept protection files." "Against whom?" Daniel asked. "Everyone. Including you?" Harlan opened his eyes. "Especially me." Evelyn stepped closer. "Victor, what did my father have on you?" Harlan turned his face away. "Not now." Daniel's voice lowered. "Now is the only time when truth has leverage over fear. Voss is using your shell structures. Owen is running. Pike is implicated. Patients are still being recalled. And someone built a frame to blame me again. If Conrad Vale had something on you that connects to Voss, it matters now." Harlan breathed through discomfort, pride fighting physiology, and losing. Harlan Biotech funded an early neurological recovery program years ago. Before Silverlight. Before the national rollout. Some compassionate access cases. Conrad wanted prestige. The governor wanted hope. Voss handled risk. I provided supply channels. Evelyn went still. Caleb Hawthorne. Harlan looked at her and said nothing. Daniel did not. "Was the adjunct that harmed Caleb routed through your supply channel?" Harlan whispered. "It was not supposed to harm anyone." The room became so quiet the monitor seemed louder. Daniel's face remained controlled, but Evelyn saw his hand tighten around the back of the chair. Harlan continued, voice rough. It was experimental, yes. Too early, yes. Conrad pushed. Voss said the exposure could be contained if the family signed quickly. You came in and objected before they had the narrative ready. So you knew I was framed, Daniel said. Harlan's eyes filled, not with innocence, but with the terrible self-pity of powerful men who hated consequence more than guilt. I knew later. Later is a country where cowards retire. Harlan flinched. Grant looked down. Evelyn's mouth trembled, but she held herself upright. Victor, she said, did Owen know about the old supply channel? Owen found pieces. Pike knew more. Voss knew everything. Silverlight was supposed to bury the old model under a new one. Predictive care, national contracts, risk management, data continuity, a clean future. Daniel laughed once, softly, without humor. You tried to launder a scandal through innovation. Harlan closed his eyes. Yes. The word changed the room. It was not enough, not remotely enough, but it was confession, and confession was a door. Daniel turned to Evelyn. Record. She already was. Harlan opened his eyes. If this goes public, the hospital, my company, your family, all of it, will bleed upward, Daniel said. We covered that. Harlan stared at him. What do you want from me? Daniel's answer came without hesitation. Call Owen. Evelyn blinked. Daniel. Owen is cornered. Voss may still have him believing the old men can protect him. Pike can no longer safely call because Pike is compromised. Evelyn's call makes him defensive. Mine makes him run. Harlan can make him feel the money door closing. Harlan's lips tightened. You want me to threaten him? No. I want you to tell him the truth he fears most. The investors will not protect him if he stays loyal to Voss. Harlan gave a bitter smile. That is a threat. It is a forecast, Grant muttered. I hate how much sense that makes. Evelyn looked at Daniel. If Owen is with Voss staff, the call could trigger destruction of evidence. Only if we ask for surrender first. We don't. We ask for proof of life. Whose life? Daniel looked at the monitor, then toward the East Tower where patients were being found one by one. The data. Harlan studied him. You really are a negotiator. No. I'm a father with experience in rooms where people lie near death and call it strategy. Harlan's nurse adjusted his pillow with no gentleness wasted. You have 3 minutes before I kick all of you out, she said. Daniel liked her immediately. Harlan placed the call from his own phone under Russell's recording setup. Owen answered after 4 rings, breathless. Victor? Harlan's voice was weak, but money had trained it to remain recognizable. Owen, listen carefully. Voss cannot protect you. Pike cannot protect you. The board will not protect you. The shell structures are exposed. The old Hawthorne archive is open. Owen swore under his breath. In the background, Daniel heard movement, a chair scraping, someone saying, End it. Harlan continued, If you stay with them, you become the only living fool in a room full of men planning to call you rogue. Owen's breathing changed. Daniel wrote rogue on a pad and turned it toward Evelyn. She understood. That was the pressure point. Owen said, You don't know what they have. Daniel leaned closer to the phone, and Harlan let him speak. They have a story where you acted alone, Daniel said. Owen went silent. They have another story where I did it. Another where Evelyn approved without understanding. Another where compromised medication came from a vendor error. Voss never builds one lie. He builds a menu and serves whichever one survives. A muffled voice in the background. Owen, hang up. Daniel continued, calm and surgical. If you want to live outside their story, you need something they cannot rewrite. Owen whispered. Mercer. Yes. They said you'd try to sound reasonable. I am not trying. I am being reasonable because panic makes bad evidence. Owen laughed shakily. You don't know them. I know them better than you do. I know what happens after they promise you will be protected. I know how long it takes for the first friendly lawyer to stop answering. I know what it feels like to read your own guilt in a statement drafted before anyone asked what happened. Owen said nothing. Daniel softened his voice by 1 degree. Owen, the patients are alive enough for the truth to still matter. That window closes, Harlan rasped. Give them the source logs. Owen's answer came quick, fearful. I don't have them. Daniel said. Wrong answer, but not necessarily a lie. Who has them? In the background, a door opened. Another voice, smooth and close, entered the call. Daniel. Again. You make a young man feel important at the worst possible moment. Voss. Evelyn's eyes hardened. Grant moved closer. Russell signaled the trace was active. Daniel did not change tone. Sebastian, if you wanted privacy, you should have built fewer conspiracies in hospitals. Voss chuckled. Still theatrical. Still hiding behind other people's fear. Fear is just consent under pressure, Evelyn whispered. Monster. Voss heard her. Evelyn, your father understood pressure. That is why his hospital survived so many inconvenient truths, Daniel said. Your problem is that patients survive today too. Some, Voss replied. The words struck the room like a slap. Grant stepped forward, but Daniel held up a hand. Owen, Daniel said, ignoring Voss. He just told you, what your life is worth to him. Some. That is the category you are in. Owen's breathing shook. Voss's voice cooled. Careful. Daniel pressed. Owen, listen to the room around you. Are they moving closer or farther away from you? Are they protecting you or protecting what you might touch? Silence. Then a faint shuffle. Owen whispered. Farther. Do you have a phone that is yours? Yes. Is it in your hand? Yes. Send a photo of the room to Evelyn's number. Not the logs. Not yet. Just the room. Show us where truth is sitting. Voss said sharply. Owen. Daniel did not raise his voice. If you do nothing, you are already chosen as the body they leave behind. 3 seconds. 4. 5. Evelyn's phone buzzed. A photo arrived. A dim conference room inside the closed outpatient surgery center. 2 laptops on a metal table, a black drive case, a man in a gray suit half turned from the camera, and Sebastian Voss's hand visible near a folder. Russell sent the image to law enforcement instantly. Aaron zoomed. Drive case has a serial tag. Daniel said, Owen, good. Now step away from the table. Voss's voice became very soft. If he steps away, his immunity offer disappears. Daniel answered, He has no immunity offer. He has a leash. Owen made a broken sound. Daniel lowered his voice. Owen, I am not offering you innocence. I am offering you sequence. First truth, then consequence. Voss offers only silence, then abandonment. A crash sounded through the call. Someone shouted. The line distorted. Russell's radio exploded with updates. Movement inside target site. Law enforcement entering perimeter. Suspect attempting rear exit. Evelyn grabbed the edge of Harlan's bed rail. Harlan's monitor jumped and the nurse snapped. Everyone calm, or everyone out. Daniel leaned toward the phone. Owen, get under the table. Hands visible. Phone on. Do not run with Voss. I can't. You can. Under the table. Now. More shouting. A door slammed. Voss's voice, distant now. This is not over, Daniel. Daniel's eyes went cold. It was over when you touched my child. The call cut. Russell listened to his radio, face tense. Law enforcement has Owen alive. 2 Voss Meridian staff detained. Voss fled through rear service exit, possibly into adjoining parking structure. Drive case recovered. Evelyn exhaled so sharply it was almost a sob. Harlan closed his eyes. Grant looked like he wanted to chase Voss himself. Daniel did not celebrate. Voss free meant danger unfinished, but Owen alive with a recovered drive meant the story had a spine. Get Owen medical evaluation first, Daniel said. Russell looked surprised. He helped do this, and may be exposed, coerced, or useful. Medical first, then statement. Grant nodded. Same as Claire. Same as everyone. Harlan opened his eyes. You're going to burn us all. Daniel looked at him. No, I'm going to stop letting fire be reported as warmth. The nurse finally pushed them out because Harlan's blood pressure was climbing, and she had more authority over that room than any billionaire. Outside the ICU bay, Evelyn stopped Daniel near a supply alcove. For a moment neither spoke. Around them, street. Aurelius was no longer the polished ceremony from the morning. It was a wounded organism fighting to keep blood moving. Nurses carried paper lists. Doctors took phone calls with patients who had nearly been erased. Security guarded evidence carts. Pharmacy teams photographed labels. Somewhere upstairs, Emma sat with Marion, Mrs. Alvarez on speaker, probably drawing a dragon with a poisoned stomach and a janitor doctor with bad hair. Evelyn said, "I need to tell you something." Daniel waited. "When you said my father arranged your ruin, I wanted to believe there had been a reason, not an excuse, a reason, some hidden complexity that would make him less monstrous. That is common. And now? Now?" Daniel asked. Evelyn's voice trembled, but she did not hide from it. "Now I think I built my whole life inside his excuse." Daniel looked at her, really looked, then walk out of it. How? One decision at a time. Public evidence. Patient-first disclosure. Independent investigation. Protection for witnesses. Compensation without gag orders. No memorial portrait until the dead are done speaking. Her mouth tightened at that last one. "You want me to remove his portrait?" "I don't want anything from his portrait. I want you to stop asking harmed people to heal under it." She nodded slowly. Done. Daniel had not expected it to be that simple. It was not simple, of course. She would pay for it. But the decision itself had finally become clean. Aaron came running toward them with his laptop open. The drive case from Owen's site is being mirrored by forensic team. They sent a preliminary index. There's a folder called National Rollout and another called Pediatric Filter. Daniel's body went still. Evelyn saw the change. "Pediatric?" Aaron nodded, horrified. "I don't know what's in it yet, but metadata references pediatric triage exclusions and insurance optimization." Daniel's face hardened. Silverlight wasn't just going to affect emergency adults. "No," Aaron said. "It looks like the next phase involved pediatric networks." Evelyn whispered, "Children." Daniel looked toward the secure pediatric floor. Every part of him became quiet. Too quiet. Grant joined them, having heard the last word. "What does pediatric filter mean?" Daniel answered before Aaron could. "It means someone tried to teach a hospital which children were worth escalating." No one spoke. The words were too large and too ugly. Then Nurse Ortiz's voice came through the radio, calm but urgent. "Daniel, you need to come to Secure Pediatrics. Emma is okay, but she remembered something Claire said in the room." Daniel grabbed the radio. "What?" Ortiz answered. "Claire told Emma the bad people said this hospital was only the first test." Aaron looked sick. Evelyn gripped the wall. Grant closed his eyes. Daniel looked from one face to another and saw the story widen beyond Street. Aurelius, beyond Hawthorne, beyond his own ruined name. The hospital had not been the target. It had been the demonstration. He lifted the radio slowly. "Tell Emma I'm coming, and tell her the dragon is bigger than we thought." Nurse Ortiz paused. "She already said that." Daniel almost smiled, but his eyes were cold. "Of course she did." He turned to Evelyn, Grant, Aaron, and Russell. "Stabilize every patient here. Secure every file. Freeze every rollout channel. No vendor access. No board portal. No internal transfer. We do not let this leave the building as a rumor or a press release. It leaves as evidence." Evelyn nodded. "And Voss?" Daniel looked down the corridor, toward the emergency lights, the living patients, the daughter waiting for him, and the hidden system that had nearly learned how to erase children before anyone could call it murder. "Voss wanted a national launch," he said, "so we give him a national audience." Daniel Cross did not go to the press first, because spectacle was the trap Voss had laid in every direction. Cameras loved panic, donors loved controlled apologies, lawyers loved vague concern, and guilty men loved any room where the truth had to compete with noise. So when he said they would give Voss a national audience, he did not mean a microphone under hot lights or a CEO trembling behind a podium while reporters shouted words like scandal, poisoning, and cover-up before the patients were even stable. He meant evidence so clean that every person who tried to touch it left fingerprints. He meant a chain of truth strong enough to survive money, family, reputation, and fear. He meant doing what he had failed to do 7 years earlier, making the right room recorded before the wrong people could write the story. By late afternoon, Street Aurelius no longer looked like a cathedral of modern medicine. It looked like what every hospital became when stripped of branding. A human machine held together by nurses who noticed, doctors who finally listened, pharmacists who photographed every label twice, security officers who guarded doors no donor had ever cared about, exhausted administrators learning that paperwork could either save lives or bury them, and frightened families waiting for someone to say the next honest sentence. Victor Harlan remained in guarded condition but conscious. The rideshare patient, Mr. Shaw, had stabilized after the team stopped chasing the wrong pathway. 2 concierge donors were improving. 3 exposed patients were still critical enough that Daniel refused to let anyone use the word contained. The recalled discharge list had reached 22 people, 19 physically accounted for, 2 on their way back, 1 still unreachable. That final unreachable patient sat on Daniel's mind like a stone because medicine was never a percentage to the person outside the count. Emma was in a secured pediatric room with Marion Bell, Mrs. Alvarez on video call, and Nurse Ortiz checking her breathing more often than Daniel asked, because good nurses knew what fathers could not bear to request twice. Emma had drawn the hospital as a dragon, but now the dragon had 2 hearts, one cracked and one glowing. Daniel looked at the drawing for 5 seconds when Marion sent him a photo, then put the phone away before it could undo him. Evelyn Vale stood beside him in the command room with her father's private archive sealed in evidence bags behind Russell, the Hawthorne videos duplicated onto air-gap drives, the Silverlight logs preserved, Owen Vale detained and medically cleared. Howard Pike locked out of hospital systems after a recorded call exposed his role, and Voss Meridian's recovered drive case under forensic guard. She had removed Conrad Vale's portrait from the main lobby herself, not with ceremony, not with a speech, but with 2 facilities workers and a rolling cart, while several board members watched as if a saint had been taken down and replaced by weather. Daniel had not watched. He had work to do, and besides, a removed portrait did not resurrect anyone. It only stopped asking the harmed to bow their heads under the frame. The last unreachable patient, Daniel said, pointing to the paper callback sheet on the table. Status. Nurse Ortiz answered over speaker from pediatrics because she had refused to be excluded from command even while guarding Emma. Name is Marcus Bell, 61, lives alone. Left East intake at 8:06, no answer on phone, no emergency contact picking up. Welfare check requested but delayed. Marion's voice came suddenly through the speaker, tight and startled. Bell? Daniel looked toward the phone. Do you know him? My brother-in-law, Marion said. My late husband's older brother. He lives above a hardware store in Astoria. He doesn't answer unknown numbers. He thinks every automated call is a scam. Daniel closed his eyes for one brief second, not in relief but in focus. A human link. Finally. Can you call from your phone? Yes. Do it now. Put me on if he answers. Evelyn signaled to Russell, who began routing an ambulance toward the address before the call connected. Marion dialed from the pediatric room. They heard the ringing through speaker. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then a rough male voice said, Marion, if this is about the church raffle, I told you I'm not buying tickets from people who water down the coffee. Marion let out a broken laugh. Marcus, listen to me. Are you home? Where else would I be? I went to that fancy hospital, and they told me nothing was wrong except my wallet. Daniel stepped closer to the phone. Mr. Bell, this is Daniel Cross from Street Aurelius. I need you to sit down while we talk. I don't talk to hospital billing. Good, neither do I. The old man paused. Who are you? The person asking if you still have chest pressure, hand tremor, metallic taste, sweating, dizziness, or confusion since leaving the hospital. Silence. Then Marcus said, less gruff, my hands are jumping a little. Marion gasped softly. Daniel's voice stayed calm. Are you alone? Yes. Unlock your door now, then sit down near it. An ambulance is coming. Do not drive yourself. Do not take any more medication from the hospital visit. If you feel worse, lie on your side but keep your head up enough to breathe comfortably. Stay on the phone with Marion. Ambulance? I can't afford. Evelyn leaned toward the speaker. Mr. Bell, this is Evelyn Vale, CEO of Street Aurelius. You will not be billed for this response. Marcus gave a bitter little laugh. Now I know I'm dying. Hospitals don't say that unless the lights are already white. Daniel cut in gently. You are not dead, Mr. Bell. You are late to a fight we are still winning. Open the door. They heard movement, a chain lock, a cough, then Marcus breathing harder. Marion spoke to him, her voice soft and fierce, telling him he was an old fool if he hung up, telling him her sister would haunt him if he made the family attend another funeral in bad shoes. Daniel listened until Russell signaled that EMS was 3 minutes away. 3 minutes was not nothing, but it was a number they could survive if Marcus stayed conscious. When the ambulance team finally came through the line, Daniel did not relax. He simply moved Marcus Bell from missing to found on the paper sheet and underlined the word, found mattered. Found was how systems began to repent. At 5:26, the first external evidence courier arrived, not from the board, not from the Vale Foundation, not from a law firm that owed half its income to hospital networks, but from a state patient safety authority whose inspector had once worked as an ICU nurse and arrived wearing flat shoes and a face that did not care who had funded which building. Daniel liked her immediately. Her name was Dr. Helen Ramirez. She examined the sealed archive, the Silverlight logs, the recovered drive, the counterfeit supply photos, the Hawthorne footage, the fake Mercer access trail, the patient callback records, and the nurse concern reports. She asked direct questions. Evelyn answered without cosmetics. Grant answered without blaming the computer first. Nurse Ortiz answered with the full force of a woman who had spent years being treated as subjective noise and had now brought receipts. Daniel answered only when asked, and when Dr. Ramirez asked him whether he was Dr. Daniel Mercer, he said, yes. No explanation, no flinch, just yes. The old name did not kill him. It did not save him either. It simply stood up in the room and stopped hiding. Dr. Ramirez looked at him for a long moment. The Hawthorne file will require separate review. It always did, Daniel said. And your role today? Father, witness, patient safety advisor, by necessity. Evelyn looked at him when he said father first. Dr. Ramirez wrote it down exactly. That, too, mattered. At 6:03, Owen Vale agreed to give a recorded statement from custody. He looked smaller on the conference screen than Daniel expected, stripped of the expensive confidence that family money often lent to weak men. He admitted that Voss Meridian had provided the Silverlight stability patch, that Howard Pike had approved risk suppression language, that Owen had arranged temporary vendor access through Tessa Klein's operations channel, that the Shell shipping label had been designed to confuse accountability, and that Voss had promised him the national rollout would make him untouchable by Christmas. He claimed he had not known patients would be harmed. Daniel did not believe him entirely, but he believed Owen had not known he would be left holding the match. That was the thing about men like Voss. They made cowards feel chosen until consequence arrived. Evelyn listened to her cousin confess and did not interrupt once. When Owen finally said, "Evelyn, I was trying to protect the family legacy," she answered, "No, you were trying to inherit its worst habit." Then she ended the call. At 6:40, Howard Pike was removed as board chair by emergency vote after Dr. Ramirez warned the remaining board members that obstruction would trigger immediate referral. At 7:10, the State Health Authority opened a formal investigation into Street, Aurelius, Silverlight's vendor network, Voss Meridian, and Harlan Biotech subsidiaries. At 7:23, Victor Harlan issued a recorded preservation statement admitting his company's historic supply channels had been used in both the old Hawthorne Access program and the current Shell structure, and that he had failed to disclose conflicts tied to Silverlight's national rollout. He did not look noble doing it. He looked sick, frightened, and cornered by survival. Daniel accepted that. Truth did not require a beautiful messenger. At 7:50, Sebastian Voss disappeared from the parking structure before law enforcement closed the perimeter. Russell brought the news carefully, as if Daniel might break something. Daniel did not. Voss escaping was not failure. Voss exposed was movement. Men like Voss survived by making people believe that if they could not catch the man, The truth was incomplete. Daniel knew better now. A man could run from a building. He could not outrun every copy of a recorded pattern once the right people stopped hiding it. "He'll come after you," Evelyn said when Russell left. Daniel looked toward the pediatric floor. "He already did." "Again then?" "Probably. And you're calm?" He shook his head. "No, I'm practiced." That answer stayed with her. By 8:30, the emergency response had changed from crisis to endurance. The exposed patients were accounted for. No deaths had been reported. Some remained seriously ill, but the pattern was now visible, the suspect products isolated, the altered labels preserved, the false AI classifications documented, the vendor access frozen, and the national rollout suspended by state order pending investigation. The hospital had not been saved in the way headlines would later claim. Hospitals were not saved in a single day. Buildings survived, brands recovered, boards reshuffled. Real saving happened patient by patient, shift by shift, apology by apology, policy by policy, and sometimes by removing the people who had mistaken silence for stability. Daniel walked into Emma's secure pediatric room at 9:05. She was sitting cross-legged on the bed with the stuffed fox in her lap and her drawing spread across the blanket. Marion slept in a chair near the wall, one hand still resting on Emma's backpack. Mrs. Alvarez's face glowed from a tablet propped on the tray table, snoring faintly on video because she had refused to hang up. Nurse Ortiz stood by the door with a chart and a cup of coffee, watching Daniel as if daring him to skip being checked himself. "Your daughter says you have not eaten," Ortiz said. Emma looked up. "Because he thinks coffee is food." Daniel stepped closer. "Coffee is emotionally food." "No." Emma held up half a sandwich wrapped in a napkin. "Eat." He took it because obedience was sometimes the best form of love. He sat beside her and ate the dry sandwich like it was the finest meal in New York. Emma watched him carefully. "Did the dragon die?" Daniel shook his head. "No." "Did the bad people go away?" He looked at the drawing. The dragon had bandages around one wing, angry fish swimming in its belly, a tiny fox standing on its nose, and a man in gray holding a stethoscope like a sword. Some were caught. Some ran. Some are being named. Emma frowned. "That's not the same as gone." "No," Daniel said. "It isn't." She leaned against him. "But you came back by dinner." He looked at the clock. "It's after 9. Hospital dinner doesn't count. Hospital dinner is weird." Daniel laughed softly, and the sound felt unfamiliar in his chest. Emma touched his badge. "Are you Daniel Cross, or Dr. Mercer now?" The question reached places no archive had touched. He looked at the badge, the cheap plastic name that had protected them and hidden him, then at his daughter, who had decided old names were allowed if they came home. "I'm your dad," he said. "The names can argue later." Emma nodded as if that settled the matter. "Good." Evelyn stood in the doorway then, not entering until Daniel saw her. She had changed out of the cream suit into plain dark clothes someone from administration must have found. Without the suit, without the launch stage, without the portrait of her father hanging over the lobby, she looked younger and more tired and more real. "May I come in?" she asked. Emma studied her. "Are you still trying?" Evelyn's eyes softened. "Yes." "Then yes." Evelyn stepped inside. For a moment she looked at Daniel as if asking permission, and he gave the smallest nod. She stood near the foot of the bed, hands clasped, not CEO to employee, not heiress to ruined doctor, but adult to child. "Emma, I am sorry I was cruel to your father this morning." Emma tilted her head. "Because of his clothes," Evelyn swallowed. "Yes, and because I thought important people looked a certain way." Emma considered this with grave seriousness. "Mrs. Alvarez says important people are the ones who bring soup when you're sick." From the tablet, Mrs. Alvarez suddenly opened one eye. "And don't forget it." Evelyn blinked, startled, and Emma giggled. Daniel covered his mouth. Marion woke with a gasp, then realized nothing was wrong and muttered, "I'm too old for this hospital." Evelyn almost smiled, but her eyes were wet. "I won't forget it," she said. "Good," Emma replied. Then she handed Evelyn the drawing. "The dragon needs another heart." Evelyn looked down at the picture. and Daniel saw the moment she understood that a child had drawn the hospital more honestly than the board ever had. "May I keep this?" Evelyn asked. Emma shook her head. "No, you can copy it. The original is for Daddy." Evelyn nodded. "Fair." The next morning, Street Aurelius did not hold a press conference in the atrium. Evelyn wanted to, at first, until Daniel asked whether she wanted truth or a stage. Instead, the hospital released a patient safety notice co-signed by the state authority, then opened a controlled briefing for affected families before speaking publicly. The notice did not say isolated incident. It did not say out of an abundance of caution, as if caution were a gift rather than a duty. It said patients may have been harmed by a combined failure involving suspect medical product, altered inventory records, unsafe AI workflow configuration, vendor access misuse, and suppressed clinical concerns. It named the investigation. It provided direct contact lines staffed by nurses and physicians, not billing representatives. It suspended Silverlight indefinitely. It promised medical care for affected patients without cost barriers. Stephen Cole fought one phrase, then stopped when Evelyn looked at him. Grant personally apologized to the East Wing nurses before the morning shift changed. He did it badly at first, too formal, too stiff, but Nurse Ortiz made him start over. The second time was better. Dr. Nair slept for 20 minutes on a pharmacy office couch and then returned to catalog every sealed product. Aaron Feld resigned from vendor oversight pending investigation, but stayed long enough to hand over complete logs. Russell found that 3 reporters had been fed an anonymous revenge story about Daniel Mercer during the night. By then, Dr. Ramirez already had the forged access trail and the Hawthorne archive. The story died before it learned to stand. 2 days later, Sebastian Voss was arrested at a private airfield under a different name with 2 passports, a hardware key, and a folder of prepared statements blaming Owen, Pike, and Daniel in 3 different combinations. Daniel heard the news while changing the filter in Emma's old humidifier at home because the apartment air had gone dry. He sat down on the kitchen chair for a while after Marion called to tell him, not because he was relieved exactly, but because his body had been braced for 7 years and did not know what shape to take when one of the weights was removed. Emma found him there and climbed into his lap without asking. "Is the bad man gone?" she asked. "Caught," Daniel said. "Gone takes longer. Will you be a doctor again?" He looked around the apartment, the scratched table, the pill organizer, the school drawings, the unpaid bills, the repaired kettle, the life that had been small but honest because hiding had required honesty in every other direction. "I don't know. Would you want to?" He thought of patients looking at him with fear and hope, of rooms where truth had leverage, of the old white coat that had become evidence in a video archive, of the janitor's uniform that had carried him into a hospital that would not have listened otherwise. "Maybe not the same kind." Emma nodded. "You could be the kind that asks better questions." Daniel held her closer. That might be enough. 6 months later, Street Aurelius reopened the East Tower without a ribbon. No donors were invited to cut anything. The first event in the atrium was a patient safety forum led by nurses, pharmacists, residents, patient families, and one former environmental services worker whose badge now read Daniel Mercer Cross, Patient Safety Negotiation Director. He had argued against the title for 3 weeks. Evelyn had finally solved the negotiation by removing the word chief, removing the executive office, and placing his desk between the family advocacy office and the clinical safety unit, where people could find him before rooms became impossible. Conrad Vale's portrait was not returned. In its place hung a wall of handwritten patient questions collected from every department. What changed before symptoms? Who is not being heard? What does the nurse see? What does the family know? What is the system hiding because it was not taught to care? Emma's dragon drawing hung in a frame beside them, a copy, because the original stayed above Daniel's kitchen table. Evelyn Vale testified publicly against Voss Meridian, Howard Pike, Owen Vale, and the former network of consultants who had treated hospitals like markets where harm could be moved instead of healed. She lost donors. She lost board allies. She nearly lost the hospital, but the families stayed. Nurses stayed. Patients who had almost been erased came back to speak. Linda Shaw stood at the forum, and said her husband was alive because someone finally asked her what she saw. Marion Bell retired from reception and became the hospital's first family navigation advocate, a role she described as keeping scared people from being eaten by polite systems. Nurse Ortiz refused promotion twice until Evelyn offered her the authority to redesign escalation pathways without turning her into an administrator who forgot shoes mattered. Dr. Grant remained difficult, proud, brilliant, and changed. He and Daniel argued twice a week and saved time because neither bothered pretending the arguments were personal. Victor Harlan testified under immunity agreements that did not protect him from civil consequences. His company paid into a fund for affected patients and Hawthorne Family Review. The Hawthorne case was reopened, Daniel's name was cleared publicly, but the article that mattered most to him was not the national one. It was a school newsletter where Emma's class wrote about heroes in everyday clothes, and Emma drew a man in gray standing beside a dragon with two hearts. On the day the Hawthorne finding became official, Daniel visited Caleb Hawthorne's mother. He did not bring cameras. He did not bring Evelyn. He did not bring the hospital. He brought the original reconstruction, the apology he had never been allowed to give properly, and 7 years of silence that had never belonged to either of them. Caleb's mother listened, cried without covering her face, and told him that she had always known the story sounded too clean. "They made you the answer," she said, "so no one had to keep asking." Daniel nodded. "I'm sorry I couldn't stop them sooner." She placed one hand over his. "You stopped them from doing it forever." He did not know if that was true. Forever was too large for medicine, law, or fathers. But he accepted the mercy in it. That evening, he came home to find Emma and Mrs. Alvarez making soup badly, because Mrs. Alvarez believed recipes were suggestions, and Emma believed carrots should be shaped like stars. Evelyn had sent a framed copy of the new patient safety wall, but Emma had placed it behind the dragon drawing because, as she explained, the dragon came first. Daniel hung his old janitor badge beside his new hospital badge near the apartment door. Emma asked why he kept both. He said, "Because both got me where I needed to go." She thought about that, then taped a small paper fox between them. Now they know they belong to the same dad. Daniel looked at the badges, the fox, the small kitchen, the daughter who had survived every adult failure thrown around her, and understood that clearing his name was not the same as getting his life back. His life had never left. It had been breathing in the next room, asking better questions, waiting for him to come home by dinner. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments. Was Daniel right to hide his medical past to protect his daughter, or should he have fought sooner even when the system was against him? And do you think Evelyn truly earned redemption after mocking him in front of everyone, or was helping expose the truth only the beginning of what she owed? If you believe quiet people are often carrying the most powerful stories, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to remember that one honest question can save a life.